Hello again, everyone. I know. Another Last of Us video. Yeah, I'm getting pretty tired of making these, but there is something I feel that needs to be addressed. After last week's news that Last of Us 2's budget being leaked, we're now contending with the gaslighting meant to distract you from the fact that the game was a massive flop. I have a whole other video on the budget, you can go check that out, but no matter what any stand tells you from a business perspective, this was a huge loss. The game only sold 10 million copies, and more than half of those were sold at a massive discount. When you sell a game for $20 digitally, you make zero profit. All of that money evaporates instantly to cover your operating costs. Forget about throwing it at the budget shortfall. Also, you don't invest $320 million into something just to get that money back and a little bit extra. A good rule of thumb is, in any business, you want to make 3 times whatever you invest. They were hoping to make $1 billion and actually lost money. So yes, indisputably, undeniably, Last of Us 2 was a financial failure. And unsurprisingly, you're being distracted from this truth. This being yet another embarrassing moment for Sony, the gaming media loyal to them have yet again circled the wagons around this turkey of a franchise. You have clickbait blogs in lockstep reporting that news of a third game has leaked. The source of this leak, it's literally some random guy posting on Reset Era. It's not leaked emails, it's not anything verifiable. This news is literally based on just this post. If you can't see that this is fake as hell and just more cope, well then I really don't know what to tell you besides that you desperately need to become less naive. What you're seeing here, besides a desperate attempt to make a few clickbait bucks off of a dead franchise, is manufacturing consent. Because these outlets want to curry favor with Sony, or they're just stans, or they want to make money off of clickbait, they're of course more than willing to lie to you. Why do you think every modern game review is a 10 out of 10 for a big franchise? Because the advertising deals and access these websites get to big players like Sony is worth a substantial amount of money. But enough about the media. What are the odds, the actual odds, they'd make a third game? Well, to help us answer that, I'd like to do a little thought experiment with you. You are a Sony executive. You're in charge of approving budgets for new projects. You have all the data at your disposal. You know exactly how many copies of each game was sold and for what price. You have an entire team of marketing executives who gauge sentiment and gather information on each game. And you have the reports showing what your cost per acquisition was. That's CPA, how much ad money you needed to spend in marketing to make one sale. You look at The Last of Us and things don't look good. The game went on sale within a year of release. That's a first for a big AAA exclusive, and especially one with what was a great brand reputation. This is the first time Naughty Dog have stumbled. The vast majority of people don't like Part 2. You know this because you have in front of you the sentiment analysis. You can see that for every positive mention of the game on social media, there are 10 people saying that it's terrible. You have the player data, which shows only a tiny fraction of people play the game each month. Sales have also completely stagnated. It took you 3 years to move 10 million copies, and you have other games that have made those sales in 3 months. By internal estimates, the game is a 6 out of 10. You remember the one time that you met with Neildruckman, and he instantly downplayed the game's shortcomings. He blamed online trolls and bigots for spreading misinformation. He gave you every excuse and accepted no responsibility for the game not making back its massive $320 million budget. Your memory of him is of a hostile and irritated man. In the elevator ride after the meeting, you feel as if Neil lied to you before, back when he promised that Part 2 would be as big as the first game, if not bigger. You've played Part 2 yourself, and you don't really understand the strange injection of politics, the weak revenge story, the thin characters. Now, it's not your type of story, but you stretched yourself to try and understand it. But still couldn't see how this was supposed to be popular. The Part 1 remake didn't sell well either. Its launch on PC was also a disaster. You think to yourself as you pour yourself some coffee in the break room that the Factions multiplayer game that they've spent 4 years working on was so bad that it had to be shelved indefinitely. Your head starts to ache a little bit. You look up and you see your boss walking towards you. Your boss reminds you that you're in a war with Xbox. You may have beaten them in the console war, but they're coming after you with a vengeance. Their plan is to put you out of business by buying up major studios to make key pieces of content exclusive. Your decisions on what games to back is absolutely crucial for the future of the company. By now, it's almost 5 o'clock. You rub your tired eyes and stand up, stretch. You pour yourself a drink. You look out the window of the Sony office tower in Tokyo. The sun is sinking down and the evening traffic is flowing along on the streets below. You gather your thoughts before you go back to your desk. What you think is right will determine whether or not you ever get to stand at that window ever again. You sit back down and you look at the sales figures, the sentiment scores, and internal ratings for God of War Ragnarok and Ghost of Tsushima. The numbers there tell a very different story. The cost per acquisition is much lower for each title. Both have sold enough copies to make back their budgets and didn't require massive price cutting. They both also turned a healthy profit. The sentiment score for each game is very high. Internally, the games are considered a 9 out of 10. The picture of your family on your desk catches your eye. Your son turned 10 this year. You want him to be able to go to a great school one day, maybe in the US or Canada. You want a good life for him. But you need money. You draw a heavy sigh and reach for the phone. You tell your boss that Naughty Dog is a lost cause. They've alienated the fans, and the risk of stirring all that back up, all that past controversy, simply isn't worth it. The obstacles to overcome are just too great. The risk that Neil would do something to sabotage the project out of spite is incredibly high, but letting him go would just raise even more controversy. You mentioned the HBO show and how Neil, yet again, couldn't resist bringing his political agenda to the production. The results were less than ideal, but enough of the original game made it across for it to generally be considered a success. The second season hasn't been approved yet because they have no idea how to approach the second game. Making major changes will be controversial. Doing it as is will produce the same lackluster response the game had and just stir up even more controversy. Your boss asks you, well, what about the media? They were useful in the past. You asked them not to cover the leaks, and they did. You asked for good review scores, and got them. Could that possibly be useful in changing enough minds to make another game a success? You think about it for a second, and then you say, no, I don't think it could. The media don't have the same influence they once did. They're widely seen as corrupt and untrustworthy. It's YouTubers and influencers people trust now, and their reputation, well, not all of them are for sale. Not enough of them, anyway. Controlling the media wouldn't help, and frankly, it didn't much help with Part 2. The media was all in, 100% behind it, and sales still remained flat. There's a long pause. You can tell your boss is thinking. Finally, he asks, so, what should we do? Pull the plug. It's settled then, he says. You hang up the phone. I hope through this thought experiment you gained new insight into not only how the business works, but the sorts of information people base their decisions on. It's a mixture of experience, emotion, business analysis, and personal relationships. To sum it all up, it would be incredibly unlikely that Sony would approve the budget for a new game after everything that's happened. Most of the original staff are all gone from Naughty Dog, the studio's reputation is at an all-time low, the war chest is empty, there is no money to be had to produce another game, and Sony aren't in the business of spending hundreds of millions of dollars of their own money just to get maybe a chance of having it come back. Not to mention the massive damage their reputation took after Part 2. Like any good business, they're after profits, and that is the golden rule. Now, I will say businesses do counterproductive things all the time. Somehow they didn't notice that Part 2 was an utter mess as far as its writing. But it could also be that they were too far along in the process to make any real changes. And they could have also trusted Neil with the job and not felt the need to watch him closely, a mistake they probably regret. I'd put the odds of there being a third game at about 1,000,000 to 1. As I pointed out in this thought experiment, Sony is in a war with Microsoft. They can't afford to commit huge sums of money and resources on things that will be a significant risk. The timing is just too sensitive. If you search your feelings, really consider what I've said, I think you'll find the truth. Thank you so much for watching. I hope we all learned something today. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Those things are all a big help and will encourage me to make more videos. Now, until next time, game on.